Welcome back to the channel, Renegades. It's Ave Dominus New, back again with more 40k content. And in the spirit of Orctober, I wanted to make a little Orky Orc video. And there's so many good Orc videos out there that it's almost like I could barely contribute anything to the... I'm learning more stuff about them every day. So I'm just going to talk about my favorite Orc moments from the Black Library novels. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Otherwise, Ghazghkull is going to call you a Zolgan bloody git. I should probably add that. Spoilers for these books at the beginning of the video. Spoilers for these books right here. Yes, spoilers for these. Be prepared to stand in midnight clad. Moment number 1 in the novel Ghazghkull Mag Uruk-thraka. Ghazghkull actually is on a space Hulk and in front of all his boys defeats some type of cornet bloodthirster thing or something, some nasty looking demon. And then he like Sanguinius style like picks it up over his head and throws it back into the portal, like, and he's just sort of like, "Is that all you got? Send something bigger." And then he like did the most nonsensical shit. He like headbutts the portal, which is just like, to the orcs, a headbutt is a very poetic thing. It's symbolic. So because of the symbolism behind it, I suppose that is why it was able to destroy the demon portal. But I think it's important not to think about it too much. It was the will of Gork and Mork is what it was. My next moment can be explained by me from the past. He's not wearing green, but I already made a video about it, so bon appetit.
I'm here to talk about The Big Daka by Mike Brooks. It's one of the more recent 40k novels I read. Before he knows it, he gets thrust into the arena because the witch that helped capture him, it was her coven that helped bring the attack on them. She was just like, nah, we're not just going to leave him to wilt away. We're going to make use of this. We're going to have him fight. So they put him in the arena, and there are humans fighting Tau, and he's criticizing the battle and talking shit. He knows how to fight Tau better than they do, of course. But he gets ran up on by I want to say that people tell me it's a Crimson Fist. I didn't know what chapter it came from when I first read it, but people tell me it's a Crimson Fist Space Marine. He fights Ufthak. Ufthak tries to recruit him, tries to talk him down, and they have this great passage about the Space Marines and how they're known for their hatred and how that makes them extra fun to fight in battle. This guy doesn't stand a chance against Ufthak. He also jobs, gets grabbed, spun around Incredible Hulk style from Marvel vs. Capcom 2, and then thrown into the crowd. Where he lands and starts wreaking havoc among the Drukhari. Great passage.
For my next moment is actually the Iron Warriors trying to pilot an orc ship. It's from a book I haven't read myself, but it's still on my list and I plan to get to it very soon. But the Iron Warriors are trying to get out of there and they take an orc ship and one of them eats his brains and they try to pilot it, which leads to hilarity. I'm going to paraphrase read some of it, because I cannot remember the quote from memory. I apologize. The cockpit was a glass-faced box squashed onto the nose of the bomber, having every appearance of being welded onto the fuselage as an afterthought, as though the orcs had built the rest of the plane and then realized they missed out on any way to control it. The control panel was a crude box, its face pitted with a few dials and levers, an enormous and clunky-looking steering column, several vulgar-looking patches of graffiti, and a bank of buttons that was missing at least 3 of its number, with a 4th dangling from the panel by a few wires. Messy. A huge copper pipe stretched along the side of the compartment, its surface pitted and scored in dozens of places, greasy rags wrapped around the worst of the ruptures. Rodan winced from the heavy promethium smell raising from the pipes, realizing with alarm that it was some element of the plane's fuel system and that once the craft was in motion, it would start leaking all over the cockpit. There was a little box rising from the floor beside the pilot's couch. It looked like a primitive clutch, a single control rod that can be slid into different positions to control the craft's speed. Little las marks seemed to denote the velocity the craft would make in each position the clutch was thrown. At some point, an orc had welded a piece of pig iron over the grove, locking the clutch into its highest speed. The Space Marine lost no time in tearing that bit of pig iron from the grove. So this is what happens when the Iron Warrior actually tries to pilot the ship. His fingers pressed on one of the buttons on the panel. When nothing happened, he pressed it again, this time hard enough to make it sink into the panel. When the plane still failed to respond, he smacked the side of the panel with his fist. Abruptly, the aircraft shuddered into life. As soon as Gamori touched his foot to the pedal, the orc plane roared forwards, leaping from the rooftop like a hound loosed from its chain. Rodan, his friend says, "Slow this obscenity down." Gamori brought his foot smashing down on the other panel, but it simply flopped limply against the floor. He turned and looked at Rodan. "That should have been the brake," he reported. It seems the pilot took it upon himself to disable it. The orc didn't want to appear timid to his fellows. He elaborated as some of the alien's memories stirred in his mind. Rodan felt his heart hammer in his breast. How do we land without brakes, he demanded. Again, Gamori focused upon the mental images from the orc's brain. We crash, was his far from encouraging response. My next moment, it actually comes back from the Ghazghkull book again. They were interrogating Makari, Ghazghkull's famous immortal grot, as to his whereabouts or whatever's going on with him, what happened to Ghazghkull. And when the Blood Axe translator they were using skipped, murdered somebody and left, they were left with just Makari. So the Space Wolf Psyker, the Rune Priest, goes inside Makari's head. You get a spirit vision of Ghazghkull's last battle against the, was it Ragnar? They all are very sick from the experience and they're reeling from it. And then Makari hops up and starts speaking to them in perfect Gothic. He said, why did you have to go running around my head like that for? If you wanted to know, you could have just asked. And he hops in the seat and he's like, here, I'll even sit in the chair. My next orc moment actually comes from Brutal Cunning by Mike Brooks, one of the first Warhammer books I've ever read. So there's a story about a squig named Princess. Do you know how Princess got her name? She ended up running around behind Ufthak, underling of a warlord, where they're taking down a Mechanicus planet. And they found, they wanted to take down this Titan because it was messing up the boys and they needed to get past it. So they found a drag jumpster. A warp drag jumpster. I don't know what they call this vehicle, but it's basically a race car with a warp engine like tied into it. So they use that to jump and warp jump into the Titan. And then there they massacre the crew, and the squig eats a bunch of people and starts to eat the princess after Ufthak smashed its control throne. So he tries to read Gothic and it says princeps. But since he is not very good at it, he says princess. This thing must be a princess. So he decides to name the squig after the last thing it ate, the princess. So the squig's name is Princess. And I think it's so heartwarming. It's so heartwarming. And you just had to be there, man. So that was the video. What's your favorite orc moment? And can you suggest some orc books for me to read? The only one I haven't read is Gobo and War Boss. And I think that they're probably pretty decent stories, but I don't know. You think I should jump into them for Orctober? I should be done by the end of the month. I am trying to finish my read-through of The Remnant Blade, which I'm enjoying, and I'm going to enjoy making the review for that. So catch that soon. Well, anyway, this is Ave Dominus Noob saying Ave Dominus Nox.